Shadowverse has introduced a lot of mechanics over the years, some good, some bad, and some completely underutilized. But ever since the start of the game, there has been one mechanic lurking, most of the time too weak to compete, but always on the verge of becoming a big problem if it's not managed properly. I'm actually talking about Vengeance. So, a bit of a history lesson. Vengeance is, supposedly, Bloodcraft's main mechanic, designed so the class can do some very high-risk, high-reward plays, making the opponent regret hitting you in the face like the other monkey they can sometimes be, and snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. The problem? Vengeance for the most part has sucked, dude. Like in the first 3 expansions, dedicated decks were really bad since a lot of the Vengeance cards in that era were almost completely useless outside of it. And really only Control could use them since the best cards were also Control ones and the deck already had the best survivability in the first place. But then, a miracle happened. KMR himself rose from the depth of the underworld, called the R&D department into the stage called Tempest of the Gods, took the nearest microphone while clearing his throat and then a pause. Then suddenly, he whispered into it. So, anyone here likes Vengeance? Finally, Vengeance became a real deck thanks to Belphegor, which is actually one of the most elegant card designs in the whole game. Nowadays, players that didn't play in that era just say, wow, that's way too expensive and too risky, why would I even run that? But back in the day, she was the card that made Vengeance work. Since she had both the powerful upside of being card advantage alongside having a really overstated body for that era, but also having both the upside and the downside of putting yourself immediately into Vengeance. And alongside Belphegor, Tempest of the God also introduced some actually really good support cards that complemented the mechanic way better than cards before that. So Vengeance became the sleeper deck of the format, looming behind as a pretty damn good option below Mid Shadow and Ram Dragon. And for some more expansions, except that one... we don't talk about that one here. The deck maintained a decent status in the meta. But then, with some exceptions down the line, it almost completely vanished from the face of the game. Why is that? Well, there are 4 main reasons I can think of. 1. The game just became faster in general. Vengeance has always been high risk, high reward, but what happens when almost every deck can kill you without even activating it? Well, the mechanic becomes outdated, that's what. And so far, it's pretty much being the only class mechanic that has had that luck since it's directly tied to your survivability. Like, not even officers and commanders suffer from that, and that's also a mechanic that has been pretty much ignored for most of the game's lifespan. And this point is exacerbated by the second one. 2. Shadowverse is an attacker's choice game. Vengeance is honestly a mechanic that at least I could actually see work on a defender's choice game like Magic the Gathering, Eternal Card Game, and Legends of Runeterra, since in there the defender has more chances to defend themselves from damage due to pretty much every creature having ward, giving you just a bit more leeway to stabilize and punish the opponent for putting you at low life. And I'm also pretty sure that's what they were going for, since the R&D team are also Magic players. But when the opponent can just ignore your board and go directly to your throat for putting yourself at low life, yeah, good luck with that. 3. Grad. Grad was teased in Omen of the Ten with Valnaric and got officially introduced into the game in Ultimate Coliseum. And in essence, it's pretty much just a natural progression of Vengeance, being also a high risk, high reward playstyle, but having the benefit of being permanently active once achieved and not being affected if you heal during the process, making its survivability a hell of a lot better than pure Vengeance, making it pretty much obsolete at this point. Also, do you want to know how much better the mechanic is? If a card has a Grad or Vengeance clause, you can bet that most of the time it's gonna be played for the former, since it's way less of a hassle to manage multiple consistent self-damage than getting a huge chunk of it out of you and risking losing way more easily. So, with Vengeance in the dust and Cygames not having any idea how to make it work, they decided that in order for it to see any play, they have to bypass it entirely and make cards that activate it for free. Which brings us to our last point. 4. To make Vengeance work in the current environment, the cards have to be busted as hell by necessity. Since you're already dying, the only way to stabilize is to do power plays. And the design team has to always skirt the line between really powerful and absolutely unfair. Which is way easier said than done, because the player base will always find ways to break stuff that the design team had either no idea were possible or didn't expect to be as strong as it turned out to be. Which is just a perfect gateway to talk about Rebirth of Glory. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Do you remember Rebirth of Glory? Yeah, I'm sure you do. That expansion was the first time when Cygames decided to see how much they could stretch the game balance to make Vengeance work with 2 cards, Azazel and Tempest Vampire. Azazel was honestly actually pretty fine. You needed to use an Evo to get the effect, and it gave you more survivability thanks to its effect, even if it made your max life 10. Something that Vengeance desperately need in order to even be able to make plays. So good work on them with that card. Tempest Vampire on the other hand, ooh boy. She was probably one of the worst cards RNG released to the game ever, making it both extremely luck-based to activating on draw, and broken enough since you could get the effect on turn 1, making you steamroll the whole match with the opponent not being able to do almost anything to beat you up. And you know what's the worst part? That the deck is still one of my favorite ones to play since it was one of the few things that could go toe-to-toe against Alana. And you know how little respect I have against strategies that use healing as its main mechanic. Anyways, I'm digressing. So, with all that said, can Vengeance make a comeback sometime in the future? Maybe? To be honest, after the whole fiasco, Science has been able to actually make reasonable Vengeance activators with cards like Epitaph, Leech Heliot, Scarlet Vampire, Shapeshifter, and most recently Waltz. And right now, Mono is pretty much just a Vengeance deck. But after she rotates, we'll have to see what they have in store. Fingers crossed something comes out because it has always been one of my favorite decks in the game. And I'm really tired of you two showing up in my why am I always throwing you two pieces of shit?